Hi, everyone, and welcome to Murder and Merlot.
We are a true crime book club podcast.
I'm your host, Tara.
And I'm your host, Michelle.
Oh boy, Michelle. It's a big episode.
It's big. Like, one of the biggest, I think.
Yeah. Not only are we covering Helter Skelter, which is huge. Obviously, it's the Manson murders, but it is our 1-year Murder and Merlot anniversary.
Yay! I just actually got goosebumps when you said that.
It's so crazy. I can't even comprehend it. How is this possible?
I don't even understand how it's been a year since we started recording.
It feels like a million years ago, but also like no time has passed whatsoever.
Right. It's crazy. Because when we recorded our first episode, we were in your parents' shop and we had no idea what the hell we were doing.
Clearly.
And then what? 2 weeks later, the world shut down and we had to figure this all out on Zoom. So
exactly. We only had 2 in-person recording sessions, and ever since, Zoom has been our friend. Kind of. Yeah.
Sure.
We're making it work, but
yeah,
I know that our audio quality is better than the first time around, so that's something.
100%. If you stuck with us this long, thank you for getting through those first few.
If you're listening to this first and then planning on going back, just heads up.
We're sorry.
We're sorry. We know it's bad. I call it the potato era because I like to say that we are potatoes in a microwave, but it's fine.
It's amazing. I love it.
The content's good. Just got to get through the audio, and
absolutely,
it's fine. But yeah, super exciting. So happy 1-year anniversary, Michelle.
Happy 1-year anniversary.
Cheers.
Crazy.
Can't
even believe it.
Okay. Well, before we jump into the madness that is Helter Skelter, let's talk about our Fluff and Stuff responses from our last big episode.
Yes, that was my last episode that I did. So
BTK part 2. And the question was, what TV character is most like you? I want to change my answer, I think, because I've been watching Parks and Rec, and I want to say that I'm April Ludgate because I just love her humor. It just kills me.
I also just started watching Parks and Rec, and I agree. I love that. Fits you perfectly.
Yes. So, final answer, April. She even likes vet men. So
it's great.
That's awesome. Not that I think she actually pursues it at all, but she's interested, and I love her so much. So that's my final answer. As for my favorite responses from you guys, Colin on Facebook said, definitely Phil Dunphy from Modern Family. Bad dad jokes, extremely awkward, loves my family, and always gets the job done. Which we know him. It's very accurate.
We love him. It's 100%. Couldn't pick a better person for him to be his TV persona. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great choice.
And my pick was Garth on Facebook. He said, Odie from Garfield. I'm pretty dumb, but when I'm needed, I get the job done.
Oh, I love that.
I love it, especially because we used to own dash hounds, and Bestie and I knew each other in kindergarten, and he had a dash hound in kindergarten, and it's just really fitting.
Yes.
But I did text him after he sent this, and I was like, actually, Odie is good. However, he is very much Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon.
Haven't watched it, heard great things.
You should.
I know
it's a kid movie, but I love them. They're amazing. But Hiccup is kind of awkward. He's kind of weird, but he's so freaking dedicated. He's so kind and he's so loyal. And every time I watch it, I'm like, he reminds me of my bestie. So
that's so
you might be Odie. You might also be Hiccup.
Either way, can't lose.
Right? It's not bad.
Not bad at all. And since, this is our 1-year anniversary, shout out to Garth, bestie, because he was our very first fan. He's been supporting us this entire time, and we are so thankful for that.
100%. He was our very first email. He's got our back.
Yeah.
One day I will actually be able to introduce the two of you
One
in
day,
like
in the flesh.
an outside social gathering of some kind.
Right.
I would like to think one day.
One day, in 25 years, we might get there.
Right?
Yes. And while we're at it, thank you to everybody else as well. Again, I can't comprehend that it's been a year. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks to all the new listeners as well, because I feel like we're getting some new peeps coming in. So
yeah,
this is your first episode, then welcome. And I hope you're super psyched for this story, because I am. I'm so psyched.
I am too. I'm so excited.
I'm terrified, but I'm so excited.
Well, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
All right, friends, grab your glass and get cozy. Let's talk about murder. Tink, tink.
Oh man, I knew this day would come. After all, we had discussed it in our very first episode that Helter Skelter made a huge impact on us and started our love for true crime. Not only has Helter Skelter been one of my favorite books for as long as I can remember, but the Manson murders will likely always be my very favorite case. It only felt right that on our 1-year podcasting anniversary, we brought out the big guns and covered this story. Now, obviously,
I also love our timing of it, how it worked out so perfectly. I don't think we planned it to actually wind up on our 1-year anniversary. We kind of hoped that we would cover this case around our 1-year anniversary, but for it to land episode 1 on our 1-year anniversary is just like divine intervention, I guess.
There's some cosmic shit going on here, and I love it. It must be a good sign.
Yes.
So, obviously, I'm incredibly excited to gush about all the details, but I am also so freaking terrified and overwhelmed by the thought of having to piece all of the important aspects of this case together in my own words and make them make sense. Most of all, though, I have to do this case justice, which, goddamn, that sounds intimidating.
Well, yeah.
Oh my God. So bear with me and join us as we embark on this wild journey together.
Ooh, wait, don't start yet.
Flower crown.
Flower crown.
Ah!
I was going to wear it.
Like how I immediately knew. I could tell.
It also has a veil attached.
Wow.
To it.
Wow, you should leave it on. Fancy. That looks more Hawaiian than California desert, but...
Well, it's still a crown made out of flowers.
You're right. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. You know what? I bet I can find a big old flower right here. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Where can I put this?
Oh, there you go.
Stick that.
I'll even let you
right
screenshot
there.
my face and post it on Instagram if you want.
Perfect. Shall we do it now?
Yeah, do it.
We do this on this phone. Bear with me. This is ridiculous.
Love it.
Let's do. Okay, now I look awkward. I gotta get my flower in there. There we go. Perfect. I got 2 just in case. Okay. Perfect. We both have flowers in our hair. It's perfect.
We're getting our hippie shit on. Let's do it.
So, of course, this series is inspired by the book Helter Skelter, The True Story of the Manson Murders by Vincent Bugliosi and Kurt Gentry. As per usual, we will deep dive into the case and tell you all the important details. After that, we will do a separate book club episode to discuss the book itself. So read along if you'd like, or if you have already read the book in the past, make sure to join the conversation and send us your thoughts. We will include your answers in our book club episode. All right. Are you ready for this, Michelle?
I'm so freaking ready.
I think I've asked you that about 5 times now.
It's all good. Wine is in hand, flower crown is in place. Even though I'm rocking the Carol Baskins vibe with the leopard print sweater and the flower crown, It's fine.
Wow. You are. Yeah. I did not notice that, but I
just saw it and I was like, oh dear.
Oh boy. Love the vibe.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
I love it.
Amazing.
The vibes tonight are great.
Let's talk about murder.
Let's talk about murder. Saturday, August 9th, 1969, Winifred Chapman made her way to 10,050 Cielo Drive in Los Angeles, where she worked as a housekeeper. She was upset with LA's bus system. It was past 8 a.m., and she was going to be late for work. Fortunately, though, she was able to get a ride from a man she once worked with, and he took her almost all the way to the gate. 10,050 Cielo was quite secluded. It was on a narrow street that winds upward from Benedict Canyon Road in a neighborhood that borders Beverly Hills. The road comes to a dead end at a high gate, which is the entrance for 10,050 residents. From the gate to the main house was over 100 feet, and you were unable to see the luxury home from the road. The nearest neighbor from the gate was about 100 yards away. So when Mrs. Chapman arrived that morning and noticed what looked like a telephone wire hanging from over the gate, it made her worried. She thought perhaps that the electricity would not be working because of the wire, but she pressed the button to open the gate and it swung right open. So she continued up the driveway. She passed an unfamiliar vehicle, a white Rambler, but it was fairly common for guests to stay overnight, so she didn't investigate it any further and didn't think much of it. She went around to the back entrance, and after using the hidden key to let herself in the main house, she immediately checked the phone and the line was dead. Continuing on through the house, moving from the dining room towards the living room, she was looking for someone to notify about the phones, until she came across 2 large blue luggage trunks, which were clearly out of place. Not only had they been moved since the previous afternoon, but they were right in the way. She noticed that there appeared to be blood on the trunks. As her eyes moved around the room, she started to notice blood in more areas, on the floor, some towels in the entryway, and into the living room. She couldn't see the entire living room from where she stood, but every bit she could see was covered in blood. She also noticed that the front door was slightly open, so she looked outside. There, too, were pools of blood on the porch, and then farther back on the lawn, she saw a body.
Oh, I just get chills just thinking of her walking in there and being like, this is fine. It's a normal day at work, but oh, dang.
Just a minor inconvenience, telephone wire that should be looked at, and oh my God, there's blood everywhere.
Blood everywhere.
I literally got chills. Mrs. Chapman started screaming. She turned around and left the house the same way she came in and proceeded back down the driveway. Only this time, she passed the unfamiliar car on the opposite side as before. In doing so, she was now able to see that there too was a body in the vehicle. In complete hysterics, she ran to the nearest neighbor's house for help and pounded on the door, screaming, "Murder, death, bodies, blood." And I don't know about you, but I never want to wake up to the sound of someone at my front door hysterically screaming, "Murder, death, bodies, blood."
Yeah, no. Like,
nope.
Not okay.
First thing in the morning, middle of the day, at night, I don't want to hear that.
Ever. Not okay.
Just putting that out there, that would be awful. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The family came to the door, and as the parents tried to calm the woman down, their 15-year-old son, Jim, called the police emergency number and noted that the time was 8:33 a.m. Good job, Jim.
Yep.
The young teen had actually ended up calling the police 3 times before anyone had shown up, and the only reason that the time he noted is somewhat significant is because that the official police report states that the first radio call made to an officer on patrol wasn't until 9:14 a.m. The 3 officers that had arrived first that day had all testified very different arrival times as well. This is just the beginning of contradicting statements and confusion within the Los Angeles Police Department that we will see in this case.
It's ridiculous.
I feel like it's a pretty common theme in a lot of cases.
As many times as we talk about the LAPD, it's like, really? You could have done better.
Exactly. And I also thought it was quite comical that the statement of a 15-year-old boy was more credible than 3 LAPD officers.
Right.
They're like, oh yeah, no, we're going to believe that guy.
Yeah, he sounds like he's got his shit together. We'll go with his version.
Yes. Regardless, when the first officers finally arrived, they began interviewing Mrs. Chapman. This was not easy, however, as she was still completely distraught and only providing vague details such as blood, bodies, every place. Out of the conversation, though, they were able to gather 3 names of possible residents or visitors. They were Polanski, Altobelli, and Frykowski. The neighbors who had called the police were able to fill in some of the details about the people who had lived next door. The house was owned by Rudy Altobelli, though he was in Europe, so he had hired a caretaker to live in the guest house while he was away. The young man's name was William Garrettson. The main residence had been rented out to movie director Roman Polanski and his wife, movie actress Sharon Tate. They too had gone to Europe. Roman was still there. His wife, however, returned less than a month ago. With Sharon, 2 friends had been staying in the home as well, Abigail Folger and Wojciech Frykowski. And I just want to say, I love Wojciech's name. Like, I think that's the coolest name. And I often get names or words stuck in my head, and that's one of them that is
one of them
always replaying in my head.
Frykowski is just kind of so fun to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wojciech, I've never heard it before, and I think it's lovely, but I don't know. I love the Polish name. It
flows smoothly. I like it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the other one that's always in my head is Aisha Gayarfis, which is so strange, but it's from Waco, and I don't know why that happens, but
it's one that pops into my head too.
It's so strange. The officer tried to find out from Mrs. Chapman if any of the bodies she had seen were any of the people mentioned, but she was unsure. She was able to offer one more name, though, and that was Jay Sebring, a famous men's hairstylist, as she recalled seeing his black Porsche parked next to the garage. After preparing themselves with as much information as they could, it was time that the officer took a look at the scene for himself. He grabbed a rifle from his squad car and then had Mrs. Chapman show him how to open the gate. Officer DeRosa started with the white Rambler in the driveway. He looked through the open car window and confirmed that there was indeed a body inside. Slumped over in the driver's seat was a young Caucasian man, probably in his teens. His plaid shirt and denim jeans were drenched in blood. Another officer arrived at that point and was informed that there had been a possible homicide. You think?
No, not at all.
No, mannequins.
Something bad happened here, but
we don't know.
It's corn syrup. It's fine.
Right. A very elaborate prank. So he grabbed his shotgun and joined the other officer as they checked the rest of the vehicles, but they were all empty. A third officer arrived, and once they had all reached the end of the parking area, they could see the body that was on the lawn. And then they saw another. From the book Helter Skelter, quote, "From a distance they looked like mannequins that had been dipped in red paint, then tossed haphazardly on the grass," end quote. They seemed so out of place in the beautifully landscaped yard beside a luxurious home with a view of downtown Los Angeles all the way to the ocean. The stillness was becoming disturbing. The first body that they approached was about 20 feet from the front door of the main entrance. It was a lot to take in. Male, Caucasian, probably in his 30s, laying on his side and clutching the grass. His head and face were severely beaten, and his torso and limbs had dozens of puncture wounds. Again from Helter Skelter, quote, "It seemed inconceivable that so much savagery could be inflicted on one human being," end quote.
Oh, chills, man.
Chills. Moving on to the next figure, about 25 feet away, sprawled out on the lawn, the officers noted that the body was female, Caucasian, had long dark hair, and was probably in her late 20s. She was wearing a full-length nightgown, and even though the officers couldn't tell what color it was, they assumed that before the many stab wounds, it was probably white.
Ooh, rough.
Very rough. Really paints a picture. 2 officers began to make their way into the main entrance. Not wanting to use the front door in case the perpetrator had been waiting inside, they looked for other ways to enter. They noticed that a screen with a slash in it had been removed on one of the front windows and was leaning against the house. They figured that was likely how the killers had gotten inside. So they continued looking around for another entrance point so they wouldn't disturb the scene. Eventually, they found an open window to an empty room and climbed inside. DeRosa was still outside, and once he knew the house was clear, he began examining the front porch. There were patches of blood all around, but most intriguing was what appeared to be on the slightly open door. Written in blood were the letters P.I.G. Meeting up with the other officers inside the home, he noticed a pair of horn-rimmed glasses on the floor, near the large trunks that had been blocking the hallway. One of the other officers, Burbridge, had been following behind, and he too noticed something on the floor. 2 small pieces of wood, which appeared to be pieces of broken gun grip. Searching for any clues as to what happened in the home that resulted in the 3 deaths, they moved on to the living room. In the center of the room was a long couch that had a large American flag draped over the back. It looked out of place, but it was not nearly as shocking as what they were about to see. You guessed it, more death.
Yep, it's gruesome.
Quote, She was young, blonde, very pregnant. She lay on her left side, directly in front of the couch, with her legs tucked up towards her stomach in a fetal position. She wore a flowered bra and matching bikini panties, but the pattern was almost indistinguishable because of the blood, which looked as if it had been smeared over her entire body. A white nylon rope was looped around her neck twice, one end extending over a rafter in the ceiling, the other leading across the floor to still another body, that of a man, which was about 4 feet away. End quote.
Oy.
Yikes.
Hate that.
Mm-hmm. Just like with the female, the rope was also looped around the man's neck twice. His face was covered by a bloody towel. He was laying on his right side, and he still had his hands bunched up near his head, as if he was still fending off his attacker. Like the rest, his clothes were too drenched in blood. Just an awful, awful, gruesome mess.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Keep in mind, the officers that are currently on the scene are patrolmen, not homicide detectives. Probably not the way they thought their Saturday was going to start.
Yeah, not a good start to your day.
No. Mm-mm. Literally anything would be better than this.
Yeah, it's not.
Mm-mm.
Poor guys.
Yep. They completed their walk through the rest of the house. Some areas had spots of blood and signs of struggle, and other areas were left completely untouched. They stepped outside near the pool, and from there they could faintly see the guest house on the property through the shrubbery. The buildings were about 60 feet apart, and once they got closer, they could hear a dog barking inside and a man's voice saying, "Shh, be quiet." And I bet you the officers were shitting their pants at that point.
Yeah.
Because there had been nobody else alive on the property so far, so who was that? Guns drawn, they surrounded the place. DeRosa peered into the window and could see a young man about 18 sitting on the couch. He kicked in the door and told him to freeze. The boy was startled, especially when he saw 3 guns pointing directly at him. Altobelli's large Weimaraner, Christopher, charged Officer Weisenhunt, chomping the end of his shotgun. The officer pinned the dog's head in the door until it was called off. And that's a good dog, just saying. If a strange 100%. man barged into my house, Hank better be on that shit.
And Weimaraners are crazy.
They are wild. I love them.
Crazy.
They are like
beautiful, psychotic, but
psychotic alien dogs. Like, I don't know. They just have such a vibe.
I know.
Oh, I love it. The young man was William Garrettson, the caretaker Altobelli hired while he was away. Obviously, considering he was the only living person on the property that had been turned into a slaughterhouse, he was promptly handcuffed and taken outside. Garrettson was confused by the entire situation and kept asking what was going on. So the officers figured they would show him. He was led to the bodies on the lawn. First, he identified the woman as the maid, Mrs. Chapman, which right off the bat we know is not accurate.
Nope.
The man he identified as the young Polanski. Of course, we know that Roman was still in Europe, so it couldn't have been him, but the officers would later find out that Garrettson believed Wojciech Frykowski was his younger brother. When asked to identify the man in the car, he was not able to do so. He was then informed he was being placed under arrest for murder. Meanwhile, the guest house was being searched by Weisenhunt, who was looking for weapons or anything with blood on it, but nothing of the sort was recovered. One detail that he did notice that will later come into play was that the stereo next to the couch had its volume set between 4 and 5. When questioned, Garrettson insisted that he was completely unaware of the massacre that took place within 100 feet of his house. He explained that he had been up all night listening to records and writing letters. While escorting the suspect off the property, DeRosa located the gate control mechanism, and even though he noticed that there was blood on it, he pressed it anyways, and the gate swung wide open.
Hate that part.
Yep.
It makes me so mad.
And later, when he was asked about that decision, he simply said that he needed to get out of there. But come on.
Like, there's things you could have done.
There's blood. There's a fingerprint. Let's just
get rid of that fingerprint.
Come on.
It's like in Finding Nemo. You didn't touch the butt.
Don't touch the butt.
You touch the butt.
It was 9:40 a.m. when DeRosa called in the report of 5 murders and that they had a suspect in custody. Before all of the West Los Angeles detectives were on scene, the first reporters were already at the gate. Immediately, there was wild speculation coming from the media. Because of the hot and dry temperatures, it was first assumed that the deaths were due to fires in the hills, but really, it was just the rumors that were spreading like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
Someone must have mentioned Jay Sebring on the radio because a reporter phoned his butler to ask about the deaths by fire. Of course, the butler did not know anything, so he called the president of Sebring International to tell him about the call. The president was concerned as he hadn't heard from Jay since the previous afternoon, so he called Sharon Tate's mother. Mrs. Tate tried calling Sharon, but there was no answer.
Oh, that horrible game of phone tag and
Right.
like not getting answers from the people that you're most worried about.
Exactly.
Oh, nightmare fuel.
Yep. And for a bit of background, before Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate were married, she had lived with Jay Sebring. They remained friends afterwards, and he was also close to her parents. This now platonic relationship would later add fuel to the rumor mill. Meanwhile, at 10,050 Cielo Drive, more and more reporters and police officers were arriving. It was a circus both outside the gate as well as inside the home. With all these so-called detectives tromping around, the crime scene started to change. The horn-rimmed glasses that had been noticed on the floor near the travel trunks had now been moved 6 feet away and replaced on top of a desk. The pieces of the gun grip that had originally been near the entryway were now under a chair in the living room, and another piece was later found on the front porch. And man, I remember the first time I read about those details in Helter Skelter, and I was furious. Like, 13-year-old me knew better than those LAPD officers. Like, don't touch the evidence. Like, come on, people.
There's so many times in this book that I'm like infuriated by the actions of law enforcement, and it's so frustrating.
And especially this whole situation, because I feel like those officers weren't there to help with the crime scene. They were just there to look at it because it was interesting. Yeah. Like, they weren't actually conducting any police business. In my opinion, they were just messing up the crime scene. It's so ridiculous. Same. The officers also did a great job of walking through the blood and tracking it around the home and onto the porch. This, of course, added more work to the investigation as the killers too left bloody footprints. But now they had to determine what came from the suspects and what came from the police. Also, while the blood was being tracked all around, the poor forensic chemist, Joe Granado, with the Scientific Investigation Division of the LAPD, was trying to take samples from anywhere that appeared to have blood. And that was already a huge job, but this certainly did not help. In the end, there was so much blood that Granado ended up overlooking many areas. Also, many of the samples that were taken had not been subtyped either. So later on, it was incredibly difficult to recreate how the attack took place because they didn't know what blood spots belonged to who. So that's like just super helpful.
Perfection right there.
Yes. And so with subtypes, you have to do it like within a week or two, I believe, or else you aren't able to do it anymore. So it's not like, oh, we still have the samples, months later, we can go back and test. No, you can't.
Blood only lasts for so long.
Yeah. Roman Polanski's business manager, William Tennant, was brought to the scene in order to hopefully identify the bodies. First, he was brought to the White Rambler, and he too was unable to identify the person inside. Next were the bodies on the lawn. The man was ID'd as Wojciech Frykowski, and the woman was Abigail Folger. In the living room, there was Sharon Tate and possibly Jay Sebring, but the victim's face was so badly beaten that he couldn't be certain. The scene made Tennant sick to his stomach. He hurried outside and threw up. Later that day, once he made it home, Tennant had to make the difficult phone call to Roman Polanski. Upon telling him Sharon, Jay, Gibby, and Wojciech were all dead, Roman, crying, insisted that it must be a mistake. Or perhaps, if it was caused by a landslide, they might still be alive. Tennant explained that he had gone to the house himself, and they had each been murdered.
Ugh, my heart kills me.
Yeah, and he was in Europe. I think he was in London at the time, right? So far away. And can you imagine that trip back to Los Angeles? Like,
no.
Traveling usually is hell, but that would be a whole nother level.
Yeah, not okay.
No. 12 hours after the bodies had been discovered, the young man in the Rambler was still unidentified. You might be thinking to yourself, like I did, why didn't they just check the registration on the car? Well, there was apparently too much happening at the crime scene, and they had so many things to do that no one looked into it.
Of course not. Why would they do that?
Right? Because it's just more interesting to look at the crazy crime scene inside the house than, identify a dead body, somebody that people are
dead
exactly,
body.
Parents are waiting for them to come home, but no, you're just ogling over this crazy crime scene. I'm not bitter or anything.
No, we're not.
No,
we're not
I don't.
upset.
I don't have strong feelings about this case. No. However, from the outside of the gate at 10,050 Cielo Drive, it would be possible to figure out the license plate number. So that is what one reporter did. After running a check through the Department of Motor Vehicles, he found out that the car had been registered to Wilfred E. or Juanita D. Parent, and it gave their address. So, naturally, the reporter made the 25-mile trip to their home to see what he could figure out. Thank goodness there was no one home.
Yeah, that's not how you should find out.
No.
Ever.
No. So he went on to question the neighbors instead. They informed the reporter that the family did have a boy in his teens, and they also shared the name of the family priest, Father Robert Byrne, of the Church of Nativity. And man, even though I think this reporter is a slimy jerk, he really got shit done. Because he was actually able to not only contact the priest, but was able to get the man to accompany him to the morgue. Just a casual road trip.
Yeah, this is fine.
Let's go down to the morgue.
Normal paparazzi things.
Right? You don't know me. I don't know you, but let's go to the morgue.
Please come look at a dead body with me.
Right? What else are you going to do on a Sunday?
Right? It's not like you got a church to talk to or
exactly.
Whatever. No, it's fine.
It's totally not related. It's their day off, actually. Priests,
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Totally.
Meanwhile, the LAPD were finally able to identify the body through a plate check and a print.
Shocking.
Shocking.
They should have done that as soon as I saw the body, but whatever.
They too visited the home in El Monte, California, where the parent family had lived. Fortunately, this time, Wilfred and Juanita were home and no reporter had gotten to them first. However, the LAPD didn't exactly handle the situation in the most eloquent way either. They simply handed the couple a card with a number on it, told them to call, and left. So they made the call, and it was answered, County Coroner's Office, which, oh man.
I rage.
I can't even imagine that sinking feeling that they felt hearing those words.
And why wouldn't the LAPD say anything?
Exactly.
Isn't that your job?
Give them a heads up. Come on.
Police officers show up at your door and be like, call this number, peace out.
I've never heard that before.
Coroner's office? No, it's not okay.
That is not okay. I've never heard that before. Why did that happen? I don't know. They were transferred to the deputy coroner, who told them, your son has apparently been involved in a shooting. Wilfred asked if he was dead, and the coroner responded, we have a body down here, and we believe it's your son.
Ugh.
Chills. They, of course, were hysterical. Around the same time as he took the call, Father Byrne made the identification. It was indeed 18-year-old Stephen Earl Parent.
So sad.
Mm-hmm. So now the obvious question is, why was Stephen at 10,050 Cielo Drive? And I'm sorry, I feel like I've said that address 10,000 times. but it's part of the story. I don't know, anytime you hear this story, it's just I know that address. I've always known this address.
I feel like the address is much of a character in the story as Sharon Tate and as Wojciech Frykowski. It's all part of it. And 10,050 Cielo Drive is just another.
It's just such a well-known
player in the story. Yeah.
Place. Okay, good. I'm not the only one that feels that way. Stephen was just a regular teenager, not a movie star or anything. So why was he there? Well, even though the caretaker, William Garrettson, did not recognize him in the car, Stephen had visited him on the night of August 9th, around 11:45 p.m. They didn't actually know each other all that well, though. Garrettson had hitched a ride home from Parent a few weeks prior. He mentioned that if he was ever in the neighborhood, he was welcome to stop by. So that's what he did. Garrettson was a bit surprised. He didn't think Parent would actually come by, but he let him in anyways. The visit wasn't too long, however, as Stephen had a clock radio for sale, but Garrettson wasn't interested in buying it, so the young man left the house, not knowing that he was not going to make it very far.
It's one of like the weird details of the story that just always like sticks out to me because I'm such an introvert. Like the thought of
I know
just showing up at somebody's house that I don't even know to be like, hey, you want to buy this clock radio?
100%. And especially in this type of neighborhood that was like luxury homes and movie stars, the gate was like huge and intimidating. The driveway was so long and the guest house was like way far past the main residence. So you would have to walk through this entire property in order to get there.
Yeah, I know. It sticks out to me every time I've read this book. I'm just like, I just could not do that. So it doesn't even make sense to me.
I've always felt that way too. I have like this weird anxiety about going to people's houses. Like, what if it's the wrong house? Even if I've been there 10 times, I'm like, what if this is the wrong house? And,
Or
and
what
I
if
have
I
like so much anxiety.
Show up unannounced and they're freaking doing it or something. I don't know.
Who knows? It's just not something that you do, at least nowadays. I know it's a very different time back then.
Totally.
Very different. It was in the 60s, but still, it just blows my mind.
There's a few houses that I know I can show up at any time. No anxiety, nothing, no warning. But at any other time, like, no.
Must
like
be
you call it like
planned.
text first.
Oh,
always.
Yeah. Text first. Make sure it's okay. Maybe even text when you arrive.
Like, let me know when you're on your way. Like, that would be great.
Exactly. That would be chill. Yeah. And let me just say, please do not show up at my house unannounced. I am so not okay with that, especially because I live in the country and that has never been a thing before because, you know, it takes a long time to get to my house. So there's a lot of time to be like, hey, on my way. Like, do not show up at my door.
Coming over. Yeah.
I will hide. I will not answer my door if anybody knocks. I've had bad experiences in the past.
Right. Totally. Anyways.
Anyways. Just a quick note here about why William wasn't able to identify Stephen in the car. Right at that time, he had noticed Mrs. Chapman standing at the gate talking to an officer. And as mentioned previously, he had identified one of the bodies on the lawn as the housekeeper. So I think it's pretty safe to say he was a bit shooketh.
No kidding.
Yeah, he was like, that person's dead over there. No, she's not. I just
said she was dead.
Yeah.
Like, is she a ghost? What?
So yeah, I think anybody would be in shock at that point. So that's likely why he wasn't able to identify the person that he knew. When Stephen didn't arrive home the next day, his parents were distraught. He didn't call, and that was very out of character for him. Wilfred and Juanita and their 3 children ended up going out for supper as they were too upset to cook. They hoped their son would be home when they got back. And this is where they had been when the reporter had come to the house, which I believe is a bit of a blessing that they were out and they did not have to hear it from him.
And I hate it that they were out for supper.
Yeah.
Right? The 911 call came in at what?
8.
9 a.m.?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the report from DeRosa was like 9:40 a.m., I think.
And so not until supper time?
Right?
When they could have just looked at his registration on his car and contacted his parents.
Right? But instead, all day, they were worried sick.
Yeah. I hate that.
Yeah. This poor family, it breaks my heart. A quote from Helter Skelter reads, quote, "It was 5 a.m. before the parents went to bed. The wife and I finally just put the kids to bed with us, and the 5 of us just held on to each other and cried until we went to sleep." End quote. And like, excuse me while I go cry myself to sleep as well, because
I'll just be crying in my wine. That's not okay.
No, no. I hate it too. I'm just gonna drink now. I have nothing else to say. I'm just gonna drink. It's just so heartbreaking because there was no reason that he should have been there. Like, it was just a one-off thing. Like, hey, I'm going to stop by this dude's house. But, it breaks my heart. Anyways.
Maybe that's why I have anxiety and I would never go anywhere because I read this book when I was way too young.
True. Maybe that has contributed to our anxiety. Who would have thought?
Right?
So, going back to the crime scene, some of the officers that had been inside the home were now speaking to the media. One described the murders had looked ritualistic. Like, great, here you go, media. Have some gasoline to add to that inferno of rumors. Like,
So bad.
thanks for that. On top of that, it certainly didn't help that a gram of cocaine and 6.3 grams of marijuana plus a 2-inch blunt was found in Sebring's Porsche. Right away, it was being reported that the murders were a result of someone freaking out at a drug party. Other stories said it was a drug deal gone wrong, burglary gone wrong, or it was a deaths by hire situation.
So bad.
So bad. And like, I don't think anybody's freaked out on pot like that.
Yeah, like
Just saying.
6.3 grams of pot is not that much.
No,
And
I mean, cocaine that's different, but like, I
It's
think
different,
marijuana
but-
was like the biggest thing here. Like,
yeah.
the most that they found around the home. And it's just
Yeah.
like, I
And
don't know
it's
about
like-
that.
It's like legal everywhere now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what you can have in your house, but I feel like 6.3 grams wouldn't be that much.
I have no concept, however. I don't know whatsoever.
Yeah, I can't comment. I don't know.
Yes, but I feel the same way. An example of just one of many headlines seen in Los Angeles later that afternoon read, Film star, 4 others dead in blood orgy. Sharon Tate victim in ritual murders. Like, come on, guys. Ridiculous.
And what exactly are the like classifications of a blood orgy?
Yes, exactly. Could you give me a definition?
I need to know more.
Yes. I do, but I don't.
I don't really want to know, actually.
Please, nobody email us.
Don't tell me.
I think we can, put it together enough. Also, I hate the fact that this headline was probably like printed and posted everywhere before the parent family knew about their son.
I know.
Of course, the police were trying to keep tight lips, at least about some of the details. Obviously, not all of them were, doing that, but a lot of them were trying. So this led to reporters making up their own details because that's journalism. That is a hard word.
It is a very hard word. Journalism?
Journalism. You know what I mean.
Yeah. Fake
That's-
news, man.
That's reporting. That's media. Yeah, that's media. We'll go with that. Oh my God. Some speculation that was reported as fact included Gerritsen had confessed to the killings, Sharon's unborn baby had been cut from her womb, her breasts had been slashed off, the victims were sexually mutilated, and the towel over Sebring's head was, of course, either a white KKK hood or a black Satanist hood. And again, just
Naturally.
of course, because why wouldn't it be? And just to be clear, all of those details were incredibly false. Just in case you zoned out for a second when I said that they were speculation. But in support of the media's claims, Sebring was also known around Hollywood for being a ladies' man, and he was also into the BDSM type affairs. There were many reports of him enjoying tying up women and whipping them before having sex, so obviously this just supported the outlandish theories. And I'll just say, as I have said many times before, that's cool. You do you, let your freak flag fly. But now, in the back of my mind is freaking Dennis Rader. Like, damn
I know.
Dennis.
He ruins everything.
Like, I've never had a problem with that. But now it's just like, oh, that gross dude.
Yeah.
Why you gotta be in my head?
Except these sound like consensual sexual relationships.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Also, I just want to note, sounds like Sebring was the bad apple out of these people. That's what at least a lot of people were saying. Really, he wasn't. But Abigail and Wojciech also were known to dabble in drugs as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that big of a deal, unlike what the media wanted to portray.
Yeah.
According to one of Sharon's friends, the plan for their evening on August 9th was just a simple night in. No big party or blood orgy. Just Sharon and her roommates, Abigail Folger and Wojciech Frykowski, and Jay Sebring would be stopping by for a bit as well. Sharon's friend Sandy declined the invitation as she had chickenpox. And I'm sure there has never been anyone more grateful for having chickenpox in the history of mankind.
No kidding.
Seriously.
She's like, man, I might have a couple pox scars from scratching my face, but
Yeah.
I'm alive. So
You
life
know,
is good.
It probably wasn't great because, she was an adult and they'd be worse at that point.
Oh, awful.
I would choose that option over the slaughterhouse any day.
Right?
Oh boy.
And every time I've read it, you almost forget that Sharon Tate is like 8,000 years pregnant. I mean, she was
Yeah.
8 months pregnant, but
Yes,
at that point,
at
she
point.
would have felt like she was 8,000 years pregnant.
Yeah.
And you don't want to party
No.
at 8,000 years pregnant.
No,
I
and
promise I've been there. It's not fun.
this idea of this big drug party, like she wasn't into that anyways. Roman sweared up and down she was not into drugs at any point, and he said that being pregnant was the most important thing in the world to her, and she wanted to
Yeah.
care for her baby. She was not going to mess around with that. So
No.
it's ridiculous.
She just wanted to like hang out with her friends and not be lonely because her
Yeah.
husband is overseas and, her baby could show up at any point.
Exactly. And strength in numbers, you would feel a lot more safe being in a house with other people in it.
Especially a house that freaking big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, in my opinion, kind of what I was just saying, but I think these types of brutal murders happening to a group of friends during a regular night at home is so much more frightening than some crazy party gone wrong. Like that means
Yeah.
it could happen to anyone on any night in the comfort of their own homes. And that
Exactly.
freaks me out.
Well, I think that was part of the point, right? So.
Well, yeah, exactly. But the media is like, trying to add fuel to the fire. Like it was this crazy blood orgy, like all these drugs and stuff. But it's like, but really the reality is more terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Angelenos felt this way as well, including celebrities and all other residents in the area. Leno and Rosemary LaBianca were of those that were frightened by the news. They were returning home from a trip to Lake Isabella when they heard about the murders that had happened the previous night on the radio. Their daughter Susan had been with them in the car and remembers her mother being particularly disturbed by the news and added that over the past few weeks, she had thought someone had been coming into their home while they had been away.
Ooh,
Yeah.
no thanks.
After dropping off Susan around 1 a.m., the couple made a quick stop at a newsstand. Leno had chatted with the owner about the Tate murders as it was the talk of the town. The man remembered Rosemary being very shaken up about the murders, and he gave them a copy of the Los Angeles Times that included the story without charge. There would have been no way to know at the time, but that was likely the last time anyone had ever seen the couple alive again, besides their killers.
Dun, dun, dun.
Did you just check behind you?
Yeah, I did. I was like,
scary.
I got goosebumps and yeah, I hung up a giant blanket fort. Giant blanket fort
Mm-hmm.
to block some sound from my stairway, and I'm not used to seeing something in the corner of my eye.
Yeah, that's a little freaky. Yeah. Okay, let's do this again. Sunday, August 10th, 1969, Susan's brother Kevin returned home from the lake trip. He had stayed an extra day with a friend and had been dropped off at 3301 Waverly Drive, Los Feliz, at about 8:30 p.m. While walking up the long driveway, the 15-year-old noticed things seemed out of place. The speedboat Leno pulled home the day before was still on the trailer, which was something that was never usually left out overnight. When he reached the back door, he noticed that all the window blinds had been pulled down, which, again, he's never seen that before either. Feeling uneasy, he knocked on the door to be let in, but nobody came. He called out, but nobody responded. Quite concerned now, he left the residence to find a payphone. First, he tried calling the house, but again, after no response, he called his sister Susan. She then called her boyfriend Joe, and they came right over and picked up Frank at about 9:30. They found Rosemary's spare key for the house that she had kept inside her car and opened the back door. And quick note, no one had actually tried opening the door without the keys, so there's no way of knowing if the door was actually locked or not. Once inside, Susan stayed in the kitchen while Joe and Frank looked through the house. When they entered the living room, they saw Leno. And it was not a pretty sight. He was sprawled out on his back with a cord around his neck and a pillow on his face. His shirt had been torn open, and there had been some type of object, protruding from his bare stomach.
Oh, brutal.
Brutal. Not wanting Susan to see, Joe hurried everyone out of the house, saying, "Everything is okay, let's get out of here." But Susan had a feeling everything was not okay, as she had seen writing on the fridge in something that looked like red paint. And it's never red paint.
Nope, just like it's never a mannequin, it's never red paint.
Exactly. Which is funny because the detectives at the Tate house said that the bodies looked like mannequins dipped in red paint thrown on the lawn.
Mm-hmm. Never that. Nope,
nope,
never ever.
That's not it. Let me tell you. Except for that one time on the morning news. Then that was a mannequin.
Well, it was a blow-up doll.
Okay.
Not really a mannequin,
True.
but still.
True, but you know, on the same kind of line.
Yeah, it's fine.
No red paint, though. They ran across the street to a neighbor's house for help. They had been too distraught to make the call, so the neighbor made the call for them at about 10:35. Minutes later, the officers arrived and Joe accompanied them to the LaBianca's home. Officer Rodriguez went to the front door of the house and it was unlocked. After one look inside, he ran to his car, called for backup, and for an ambulance. They arrived right away, and not surprisingly, 44-year-old Leno was pronounced DOA, dead on arrival. Upon closer examination of the body, they found that along with the pillow, there was actually a bloody pillowcase pulled over his head, and the cord around his neck was connected to a very large lamp. It had been knotted extremely tightly, and his hands had been tied behind his back with the leather thong. As for the object protruding from his stomach, it was, quote, an ivory-handled, bi-tined carving fork. In addition to the number of stab wounds in the abdomen, someone had carved the letters "War" in the naked flesh. End quote.
Oh, it gives me chills.
Me too. Me too, man.
Phew, sorry.
Bless you.
Just snuck up on me out of nowhere.
Yeah. Gives you chills and the sneezes.
And the sneezes.
It's a roller coaster.
I think that's the first time I've ever sneezed on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
My husband has sneezed like 100 times.
Probably. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's my first one.
Why is that so funny? I don't know. The two paramedics were on their way out when Officer Rodriguez called out that there was another body. In the master bedroom, 38-year-old Rosemary was lying face down on the floor in a pool of blood. Her dress and nightgown she had on was bunched over her head, exposing her back, butt, and legs. She too had a pillowcase over her head and a lamp cord tied around her neck. There had been too many stab wounds to count. As mentioned before, there had been writing on the refrigerator, but it was in blood, not paint. And it was not the only writing found in the home. High up on the living room wall read, "Death to pigs." To the left of the front door was the word "rise." And what Susan noticed on the refrigerator door was the misspelled phrase, "Helter Skelter," which we all know, of course, was an attempt at writing Helter Skelter.
But spelling wasn't their forte, and
No.
that's okay.
That's fine. I was going to say no judgment, but you know what? No, lots of judgment on these people.
Judgment.
All of the judgment.
All of the judgment. We actually judged Rader pretty hard on his spelling.
That's true.
And grammar. So yeah, I guess I'm also judging you.
Yes, we must be fair.
You people who we are not naming yet.
Yes, that's right. The case was assigned over to robbery homicide, which included some of the officers that had been at the Tate residence the night before. There had not been any signs of struggle in the house and no burglary either. Although the couple may not have been movie stars, they were pretty well off. Lena was the president of a Los Angeles supermarket chain, and Rosemary owned her own successful dress shop, the Boutique Carriage. In the home, detectives easily located all kinds of jewelry with gold and diamonds, as well as handguns, shotguns, rifles, valuable coin collections, credit cards, cash, watches, the list goes on. So obviously, if robbery was the motive, a lot of these items would have been stolen. The only items that were determined to be missing were Rosemary's wallet and her wristwatch. Once again, Granado from SID came to the scene to take blood samples. And this time, he didn't bother to take any subtypes at all. So that was an interesting decision.
Yeah, that's nice.
Like, were you too exhausted from the crime scene beforehand? Because I know you were there for hours and hours and hours. Like, maybe somebody else should have been brought in if that
Yeah.
was too big of a, too much work for you.
Yeah, back-to-back murders, I imagine, would be hard, but still, like,
Still,
just
if you're not up
do
to
your
it,
job. Just do your job.
exactly. Either do your job or get somebody to fill in for you, because that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Animal Regulation Department arrived in order to remove the 3 family dogs that had been found inside the home. And that detail doesn't have any significance to the investigation. I just felt really sad for those doggos.
Also, super happy that the doggos were okay.
True, yes. It's just sad that they had to see their owners like that, and it breaks my heart.
I know. I can't think about that.
We can talk about all kinds of brutal murders, but can't talk about the doggos being sad.
No sad dogs allowed.
No, except for, in our last morning news, but it's okay.
Well.
Yeah. A quote from Helter Skelter about the 2 murder scenes and investigations. Quote, Los Angeles, California. Consecutive nights, multiple murders, victims affluent Caucasians, multiple stab wounds, incredible savagery, absence of a conventional motive, no evidence of ransacking or robbery, ropes around the neck of 2 Tate victims, cords around the neck of both LaBiancas, and the bloody printing. Yet, within 24 hours, the police would decide that there was no connection between the 2 sets of murders.
I hate it so much.
I could see and feel the rage building in you while I read that.
I hate it. Makes me so mad. They're not similar at all.
And especially considering, like, some of the same detectives were on both scenes.
Yeah.
That's insane.
But no.
No.
Why would you think that these would be connected?
Right?
Yeah.
Mad. So basically, right away, they just figured that these were copycat murders. Because that's
a day later,
the most logical explanation here, right? So if people weren't freaking out before, they certainly were now. At least after the Tate murders, the police had a suspect in custody. But the second night of slaughter happened while William Garretson had been locked up. That means either he didn't commit the first ones at all, or if he had, there are more killers on the loose. This fear actually made it more difficult for police to locate people to question because everyone was in hiding, moving, or beefing up their security. Some other interesting facts: one sports store in Beverly Hills was selling on average 3 to 4 guns per day. In 2 days following the Tate LaBianca murders, they sold 200. And with that, reports of accidental shootings and suspicious persons reports went way up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be reporting everybody.
And 200 people who've never bought a gun before.
So how safe are they?
Accidental shootings, right?
Exactly. I guarantee you that they do not have any knowledge on gun safety, which is very important. Very. Both Garretson and Roman Polanski had been questioned and given polygraph examinations. Not surprisingly, they both passed. Obviously, Roman was not in the country at the time, so he could not have committed the murders himself, but some had thought that he was involved. Especially since Sharon and Jay had previously been together, maybe there was still something going on there. Roman knew there wasn't, however, and he wanted to clear the air. The examiner was satisfied that he had no involvement or hidden knowledge of any of the murders. Things were looking up for Garretson as well, as the police were able to determine that if he was inside the guest house, he would not have been able to hear the gunshots or the screaming on the night of August 9th. They did this by recreating the conditions as best as possible and using a general level sound meter to detect any noise. From the piece of broken grip found at the scene, investigators could tell that the gun used was a high-standard .22 Longhorn revolver, which was a pretty unique gun. So by using a similar .22 revolver and setting the stereo volume to between 4 and 5, they played out the events of that night and no noise was picked up. However, even though these findings clearly indicated that Garretson wouldn't have heard anything, there were many LAPD officers that still thought otherwise.
And I mean, I don't discredit them for that because it is weird. You're on the same property, all of these people are dead. How do you not see something? How do you not hear something?
Right.
When you say you were awake the whole time.
Yeah, very true.
It is weird, but the guest house is set way back on the property, right?
It
So,
is, yes. Yeah, and actually really interesting. Well, during his polygraph examination, they asked if he was responsible for the murders. He did say he felt responsible for Stephen's death, but that's obviously because he wouldn't have been there without
right.
knowing William. So they cleared that up. But then the other thing was he said that he felt scared that night. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, what made you feel scared? And he said that he had seen that his door handle on the door had been turned, I think. So
Mm,
it just gave him a eerie feeling.
totally. And my other thought is they live in LA, like they live in like the hills of LA. Like, how often do you hear
Mhm.
noise from the city? How often do you hear
Right.
a woman screaming? How often, like, I imagine it's probably
Hmm.
more often than you'd think, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So
probably.
it's not
And
necessarily that foreign that you wouldn't think anything of it.
yes, very true. And in the book, they explain that the hills kind of play tricks on the sound, and something might be completely audible from like miles away, but yet you could be quite close to the area and you won't hear
Mhm.
anything. So it's really interesting. Actually, some people did call in to say that they heard screaming or
Mhm.
gunshots that night, but nobody really followed up on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because LAPD.
woohoo. Fortunately, though, the young man was eventually released. Unfortunately, the LAPD did not have any other leads at the time. There, for a while, they thought the killers may have stolen Sharon's red Ferrari and used it as a getaway car, but it was later found at a garage getting repairs. With how chaotic and messy these crime scenes were, you would think that the killers would have left some evidence behind. And there was some, but it was pretty slim. They were able to lift some fingerprints, however, not including the ones belonging to LAPD officers, because, they can't just not touch things.
So much rage. Anyways.
we won't get over it, so don't tell us to get over it. They recovered 50 lifts. Of those, 7 were Gerritson's. All of them were in the guest house, not in the main house. 15 belonged to victims. 3 couldn't be read, so this left 25 unmatched prints. So that's pretty good.
Hmm.
Then there were, of course, the glasses and the pieces of gun grip. Detectives also took portions of the rope used around the necks of Sharon and Sebring in order to determine where it had been made and sold. Also found at the crime scene near Sharon's body was a Buck brand pocket knife that had been wedged behind a cushion on a chair. Unfortunately, the prints on the knife were smudged, but officers hoped that it would help in the investigation anyways. At the LaBianca home, there were 25 prints found, but only 6 could be read. They had all belonged to Leno, Rosemary, or Frank. However, many of the areas that should have had prints, such as the refrigerator door, the chrome handle, or the carving fork, did not. This likely meant that the place had been wiped down after the murders. And then there were the autopsies. Hold on to your butts, because these details are brutal.
It's not okay. They're rough.
Mm-hmm. Originally, someone had suggested the stab wounds had been inflicted with a bayonet, which is just absurd, if I do say so myself.
I mean, we are not in Civil War times at
No,
this point, so
I mean, I do have a bayonet, but
you do.
I do, but it's just on the thing. Like, it doesn't do anything. Like, it's stupid. This is a
And
stupid idea.
and I feel like it would be really awkward to
It
stab
is,
somebody with a bayonet. So
especially with this much brutality and this many times over and over again. It does not make sense. Anyways.
no.
But that theory was ruled out pretty quickly for multiple reasons, so that's good. The depth of the wounds exceeded 5 inches, and the width of the knife used was between 1 and 1/2 inches, which was much bigger than the dimensions of the pocket knife found at the residence. So, for Sharon Marie Tate, 26, the cause of death was multiple stab wounds of the chest and back, which penetrated the heart, lungs, and liver, causing massive hemorrhaging. She had been stabbed a total of 16 times. 5 of those would have been fatal on their own. J. Sebring, 35, the cause of death was insanguination. Yes, I looked up how to say that.
That's actually one of my favorite true crime words.
Is it?
It is. And I don't know why. I just like it.
Yeah. I mean,
Exsanguination.
exsanguination,
Hmm.
which obviously means that he bled to death. Just kidding. I didn't actually know what that word meant. I probably have heard it multiple times, but never stuck.
Mhm.
He had been stabbed 7 times and shot once. 3 of the stab wounds and the gunshot were fatal injuries. Abigail Ann Folger, 25, had been stabbed 28 times. Wojciech Frykowski, 32, got the most savage attack at the Tate house. He was shot twice, struck in the head 13 times with the blunt object, and stabbed 51 times.
My God.
Ugh. Ugh. Stephen Earl Parent, 18, had 1 defensive stab wound and was shot 4 times. Rosemary LaBianca, 38, I'm sorry, just keeps going.
Yeah.
Rosemary LaBianca, 38, the cause of death was multiple stab wounds. She had been stabbed a total of 41 times. 6 of those would have been fatal. Many of her wounds were to her back and buttocks. Leno A. LaBianca, 44, the cause of death, again, was multiple stab wounds. Another rough one here. He had been stabbed 12 times with a knife and had 14 puncture wounds made by the double-tined fork. Out of the 26 wounds, 6 would have been fatal on their own. Since he had a pillowcase over his head, no one knew that he also had a knife protruding from his neck until the autopsy was performed.
So rough. Ugh.
The brutality in these murders is just insane, and these autopsy findings in Helter Skelter have always stuck with me from the very first time I read the book.
I know. Me too.
When I think about this case, that's what I think about.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you thought we were probably done, part 1, there is actually one more murder that we need to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
During the autopsies, 2 homicide detectives approached one of the LAPD officers assigned to the Tate case. They had stumbled onto something very interesting that should be looked into further. On July 31st, they were called out to 964 Old Topanga Road in Malibu to investigate a murder. Inside was a body of a 34-year-old music teacher named Gary Hinman. He too had died from multiple stab wounds, and even more compelling was a message written in blood on the living room wall. It read, "Political Piggy." The scene was too similar to the others to not be connected. In this case, however, a really good suspect had been arrested. Robert Bobby Beausoleil, known as a young hippie musician, had been caught driving Hinman's car, with blood on his clothes and a knife had been hidden in the vehicle. He was arrested on August 6th, which of course was a few days before the other murders had taken place. But it was possible that he wasn't the only one involved in the Hinman death. He had actually been living with a group of people at an old movie ranch known as Spawn's Ranch. I'm getting chills.
I'm just like smiling.
I know.
Like, mm-hmm.
I'm way too happy right now to be talking about murder.
Weird.
Yeah. It seemed like an unusual living situation for sure. The detectives explained that they were a bunch of hippies with a leader, apparently named Charlie, who had convinced his followers that he was Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, the moment hippies were mentioned, the Tate detectives lost interest, saying, "Nah, we know what's behind these murders. They're part of a big dope transaction." And that was the end of the conversation. These leads could have broken the case wide open within 24 hours of the Tate victims being discovered, but instead it would be months before there was any progress in the right direction again.
That's so frustrating.
I know. I know. Oh, that just infuriates me. One more interesting note to end on. The August 17th, 1969 Los Angeles Times paper included the following stories. Anatomy of a Mass Murder in Hollywood, which of course is referring to the Tate murders. To the right of that was LaBianca couple, victims of Slayer, given final rights. And on the far left of the very same page as these other articles reads, Police Raid Ranch, arrest 26 suspects in auto theft ring. And if you didn't connect the dots, let me help you out here. That ranch where the raid took place is the same ranch Bobby Beausoleil had been living before his arrest. And I'm not much of a spiritual person here, but the universe was tying these stories together. And we will dive deeper into the connections here in the next episode, because this is where I will end it for today.
You did it!
Woo!
Amazing!
Yeah, that blows my mind though. That newspaper article, I looked it up. You can Google it and find it. It is
I have.
Creepy. It is so eerie. I love it.
And it's one of those details from this book. There's a lot of details in this book that just stick out to me. Yeah. But this is one of those ones that it's like right there, in black and white for you.
Literally.
Like, maybe just read it. Maybe just look at it. What's in front of you?
Just, have an open mind. Like, don't just immediately shut everything down. Like, nope, not connected. Not connected. Right? Like, come on. It's insane.
Again, do your job.
Simple.
It's not that hard.
That's all we ask. Obviously, my source today was Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi and Kurt Gentry. And I know that whole part, that sounded like it was right from the book. I tried very hard to write my story differently. And I think I've just read this book so many times now that it just kept coming out exactly the same. And I'm like, no, I must change it. So,
I mean, the story, it doesn't change. So
exactly. The stories don't change. The details don't change. There were, however, a lot of details that I wanted to add, but you just can't.
You got to draw a line somewhere, right?
Exactly.
And we can talk about other things as we go forward. So
exactly. And if you want all of the details, then obviously go read the book. Like, it's insane.
It's so well written. Like, Vincent Bugliosi's kind of funny as well. And you're just like, and I don't know what it is about him that I find funny. He's just like, he's matter of fact. And he's like, but at the same time, there's all of these fuck ups that they did.
Yeah. And he's kind of like, look at the humor in this fuck up.
You have to. I mean, it's like this awful, horrible case, but it's how he tells it. It flows beautifully. Mm-hmm. He ties everything together so well, and there's no loose ends at the end of the story. So
exactly. So if you haven't, definitely go just read that book. It may take a while because it is a very long book, but we would 100% recommend it.
Yes. And then read it again and again and again, because every time I read it, I find I'm connected to different details.
Yes.
So
100%.
Yeah.
And then after you read it, you can join us for our book club, because we will talk about the book further, obviously, and we will have a lot to say about it. So hopefully you guys will join us for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And yes, in the next part, we will be getting to know the killers, a certain family, and a tiny man with a really big ego.
Oh, the tiny man.
The teeny tiny man.
Oh, yes.
He's so small.
I know.
And straggly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so excited. Not gonna put it out there that it's gonna be done next week, because I gotta edit this and it's gonna take a long time.
Yeah, and morning newses are fine and they're fun. Yep. And
so expect a morning news next week, and then we will hit part 2 the week after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
And are you thinking you're gonna do this in 3 parts? Maybe 4?
At least 3 parts. We will see how it goes, but this book is really trial heavy. Because obviously he's the prosecutor, so he knows a lot about the trial. So I have to wean it down quite a lot. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not certain yet.
Trial is a complete circus. So
100%.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. It's just come along on the ride with us because it's fun.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Awesome. Well, you want some fluff and stuff?
I do. After all of those autopsy reports, I need something fluffy.
I know. Such a good way to end this story is, here's all the autopsy reports.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, today's question is, have you ever been told you look like someone famous? If so, who was it?
Well, currently, Carol Baskins.
Yes, 100%.
Not intentionally. But yes, I used to get told that I looked like Avril Lavigne a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I had like huge Avril vibes in high school. Mm-hmm.
You know what? I have seen some old pictures of you, and
yeah,
actually, I could see that.
Yeah. Punk rock princess.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Straight hair.
Yeah.
I just wasn't wearing the tie, but
I tried to pull off the tie, but that was more Green Day related because,
yes.
that was the era of American Idiot and they were all about the red ties.
Well, yeah.
So I tried and
I-
failed. And I had a t-shirt from, it wasn't Hot Topic, but it was very similar store. And it was, the tie on the t-shirt. Like it wasn't actually,
totally.
You know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Classic punk.
Yeah. No, I remember in high school, I had because I was in high school in the early 2000s. So I had the baby tee, my belly button would hang out, short sleeves. And it had one of my favorite ones anyways, had little turtles across the front. And then I would wear bright yellow, baggy fleece, flannel pants.
Wow. That's a look.
It was a look. Yeah. I'm happy that I didn't go to high school in the age of social media. I'm very grateful for that.
Oh my God. I literally think that just about every day of my life. Thank God there were not cameras, pictures, videos, TikTok. I would have ruined my future with TikTok if we had that
I know.
when I was a child or a teenager or whatever.
And I had a big baggy hoodie that had a flaming happy face on it. And I
classic.
loved that.
Yeah.
So I had the Avril hair, flaming hoodie. Yeah. It was.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Skater shoes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The skater shoes that are 10,000 times too big for anybody and skinny jeans on top of that. That's at least what I wore. Yeah.
Avril vibes, man.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. What about you? I'm so curious now.
Well, not to toot my own horn, but beep beep. People have said that I look like Mila Kunis, which is so not true, but I will accept that.
I can kind of see it. If your hair was shorter, totally.
I love her. Think she's amazing. So I will 100% accept that. But I mean, I see it a little bit, but not fully.
Yeah.
But she's a badass. Did you know that she actually is from Russia? She moved to this Los Angeles when she was 11.
No way.
Yeah.
And then she was amazing. Started in that 70s show when she was 15?
Yeah. Really young. Yeah. And she had to learn the language and all the things when she came over. Crazy. I love her.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Anyways. Yeah. That's fun.
That is fun. Well, make sure to answer our question as well. If you've been told you look like somebody famous, who do you look like? We want to know. And let us know what you think about the episode. You can email us at murdermerlot@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram at Murder Merlot Podcast, Facebook at Murder Merlot Podcast, and Twitter at Murder Merlot1.
You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else you can find podcasts. We would love if you subscribed, and if you don't, you're dead to me.
All right. And we'll just continue reading Helter Skelter, and
it's gonna
I'm not ready to reveal what our next book is. So
yes, we have it planned out, but we're gonna
neither
hold
of us
off.
have started to read it. So.
Yes, exactly. And we're gonna be sticking around with the Helter Skelter theme for a while here. So get cozy.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. Remember to drink wine
because it's not good to keep things bottled up. Bye.